at you, kids.
You had me at hello.
I wish I knew how to quit you.
Bond.
This seems so
James Bond.
There's no place like home.
I'm gonna make him an offer down with you.
Today, for your golden eyes only, we've got a license to thrill ya. Before the sky above us falls and our tenure in Her Majesty's Secret Service ends. Because now, we have no time to die. Cue the music. Thank you. I came up with that all today. Hey everybody, well, by today, like literally 5 minutes before I recorded this, but hey everybody, welcome to Gone with the Wind, the show about award shows where we talk about, you guessed it, award shows. I am with an esteemed panel here today, 2 regulars and 1 special guest, but before we get to our special guest, our regular panel so far is not Abe. He had to go to a last-minute vacation in the group chat. I'm like, okay, good for you, sir. Road trip, thank you. Oh, as you heard, Dan is here.
Yeah. Hey, you know me. I love talking about movies. I love talking about award season. And I'm glad we got a special guest who specializes in Bond.
I would hope that he specializes in Bond because today's episode is very much concentrated upon that, and a particular movie that came out this past week here in the U.S., but apparently 9 days ago in the U.K.
2 weeks
but we
ago.
also have 2 weeks, well, roughly. We also have Malcolm.
Hello, I'm here.
Would you be upset if I called you Malcolm Moneypenny? Listen, I came prepared. I have Manning M. Franks because I'm, of course, the head of the podcast. So I give myself the moniker in a very kind of jerky way. Now I look back at it. But our special guest here today is someone who came with glowing recommendations from both Dan and Malcolm. And this is actually our first time meeting today, literally 5 minutes ago. But Joe, welcome.
Oh, it's great to be here. I'm looking forward to this. Saw the movie on the night it came out over here, and it's taken me a while to find some people to talk to it about because a lot of people haven't seen it, and it didn't come out for a couple of days, and I was sitting there waiting to talk about some of the things that happened in it. So yeah, I'm looking forward to this.
There are definitely some things that happen in it, but I'm glad to be able that you are here so we can talk about it because this is probably the most consequential Bond. I would think so, not only because it came out in the middle of a pandemic or near the tail end, knock on wood, of a pandemic, but because of what it means for the character. But yeah, before we get into our discussion, Joe, tell us a little about yourself. For those people who may not know, obviously we'll go do all the plugging at the very end, but by your social media and whatnot. But tell us a little bit about you for people who don't know. How do you love Bond? And kind of tell us more about yourself outside of just this podcast sphere of Gone with the Wind.
Well, first thing first is, as people may be able to tell, I'm British, so James Bond is part of my blood.
No way.
It was just something that I sort of came into. I think my older cousin had the GoldenEye game around 95, and I remember playing that and stuff like that. And then I remember sort of my dad had the VHS tapes that would have been recorded from terrestrial TV at the time of certain Bond movies. So I would watch them and just watched them over and over again, and I just sort of fell in love with Bond from that, playing the games and doing a lot of Bond related stuff. It was really good, and obviously, Bond was one of the things that actually introduced me to one of my second loves in the movie world, because I remember being probably about maybe 7 years old or something, and watching The Spy Who Loved Me, which was one of my favorites, on a VHS tape. And I was probably, as I said, I was a kid, I was probably playing with toys at the time, and the tape was on, and Spy Who Loved Me finished, and it just kept on playing, and Return of the Jedi followed it, and that's how I got into Star Wars as well. I just remember looking up at the screen and seeing these words flying at me. I was like, "What is this?" So, but yeah, I've been a Bond fan ever since, and it's just been one of the things that I've been able to, as I've been watching them for so long, just something I happen to just watch them on repeat enough that a lot of stuff from what will happen sticks, which helps in the old movie trivia community.
No, absolutely. James Bond is a staple. So before we begin into what movies we watched this past week, we talked a little bit about In Your Blood. You guys you don't really get Harry Potter and James Bond first always, but if you had to choose real fast, what would it be? Harry Potter, James Bond?
Bond.
Wow, that was real fast. We ended that discussion real quickly. But moving right along, what have we watched this past week? Dan, the man Skip Allen. Tell me, what have you watched this past week?
Well, I'll tell you right, Manning.
Besides Bond, heads up, just everyone know, just everyone so know, we will not be talking about Bond just yet. So go ahead, Dan.
I watched Bond 2 weeks ago. I actually watched a couple movies that could be in contention for a couple Academy Awards, and that's international feature and documentary feature. And the first one will be The Rescue. This is a true life story about the soccer team that gets stuck in a cave in Thailand, and the cave is flooding. And it's from the same documentary team that did Free Solo. So that's all I'm really going to say. I don't want to give anything away about this, but this is the true story. This actually happened. And I'll tell you what, wow, what a amazing documentary. A lot of people are talking about Flea, which I haven't seen yet. Hopefully I'll see soon. We'll have a chance to talk about Flea. But Rescue is the next documentary that everybody's saying this is. But we got to remember this is a caveat here, because guess what? The documentary branch, you can never predict what the heck they're going to do.
They do whatever they want.
So, but The Rescue right now would be my top documentary of the year that I've seen. I've seen a lot of documentaries this year. So that was incredible. And the other one is the winner, or one of the winners. They give a bunch of awards, different categories or whatever, awards away at Cannes. And one of the winners at Cannes was a film called Titane. And Titane, oh my God, what a crazy, frenetic, wild movie. If you've seen the trailer, that's just the tip of the iceberg with Titane. And it's French. It's a French movie, so it's subtitled with English. And it's about a woman who gets in a car crash, but then that's just the beginning of the craziness and the frenetic and the wild ride. And there's this crazy guy. I mean, it's hard for me to name the names of the people because they're French people. But Titane is another one that keep an eye out for Titane at the Academy Awards for Best International Feature. And France has got like 3 of them, so they could put any one of these 3 films up for. It all depends what they decide to put. Each country, they put their own movie. But one of the top foreign films of the year is Titane, and it's a wild, crazy ride, no pun intended, because there's a car crash. There's nightclubs. There's this it's from. If anybody's seen this movie called Raw a couple of years ago, same director, DiCarlo, and it's a woman. If you saw that movie, you know her style is just a lot of like flashing lights, a lot of just crazy, weird cinematography. That's
very surreal.
Surreal. There you go. That's a good word. That's the word I should have been using. Thank you, Manny.
No, it's okay.
But yeah, Titane, I can't say enough. You gotta. I mean, it's one of those movies you just gotta see the movie. You might not even like it, but I think it's one of the best international movies I've seen all year. I've seen not as many early on. We've had this discussion before. The later the year goes by, more of those start rolling out. So one of the early ones I had a chance to see was Titane, and I really, really enjoyed it. I was a little bit behind on the Venom, There Will Be Carnage deal, but I'm not a big fan of that movie. To me, it was just a giant CGI fest, and some of the best scenes in the movie are in the trailer. If you watch the trailer, like some of the best stuff is in the trailer. I mean, and this is $1.90. I mean, $1.30. I mean, 90 minutes, 90-minute movie. They cut character development out of Venom. There Will Be Carnage, and that I wanted to work like Michelle. Why even? I know you had her in the first movie. You have her in this movie. But why? I mean, you just don't do anything with Michelle Williams. It's just like a waste of Michelle. She's such a talent.
I will come to the defense of Venom, Let There Be Carnage, even though I hated it. I will say the actors. Well, it's the actors commit 100% to whatever they're doing. I don't know what they're doing, but they're doing something and they commit. Tom Hardy's having the time of his life with Venom, which is obviously his voice, but I respect just the sheer insanity that is that movie, even if I don't get any enjoyment out of it, other than the fact that I get to see Venom because I love Venom.
This is what Tom Hardy's doing. This is what we get Tom Hardy doing.
Listen,
We can't get better.
The man, it's a
than this
passion
for
project
Tom
for some
Hardy.
reason.
I don't get it.
I don't know why.
I just don't get it. This guy is an unbelievable actor. And this is what we get. We're getting Tenet. I mean, we're getting Venom the last couple years, 2 or 3 years. It's like he's not in something better than this.
Well, if that's what he needs to do to, get his creative itch out, good for him. Let him have. Hey, if it does good for theaters, because I know that did really well in theaters, and if that helps theaters out in the long run, then I'm happy about that, because that's something that we need at the moment when it comes to those big tentpole blockbusters.
No, I agree, Manning. I agree with that. Also, a couple Netflix horror movies I saw. No one gets out alive, which was a really weird. But if you like Guillermo del Toro movies, you might actually like No One Gets Out Alive. And the one I actually recommend out of those two is Someone's Inside Your House. Wow, what a really
straightforward.
Someone's Inside Your House. It takes two subgenres of horror, the home invasion and the teen horror genre, and mashes them together and really creates this fun, entertaining horror movie. I'm not going to give away any details because I want you to watch the movie and you see those details yourself. And in my review, I didn't even say anything about the details, little details, because I don't want to give away. You should watch the movie and see those details yourself. But I definitely recommend Someone's Inside Your House. Do not recommend you will not what was it? You won't get out alive. No one will get out alive.
I love that those are both very assertive statements as their titles. They're not related. I just find that really interesting. But I'm ready. Are you ready to have your mind blown, Dan, for a second?
Is it something about Midnight Mass? Because I love
no.
That.
Oh, okay. Well, I will mention that, but not right now.
Okay. Right.
It's actually it's the French film that you just talked about. I was listening to I believe is it Screen Talk by IndieWire? Yeah, Screen Talk by IndieWire. Apparently we've been pronouncing Titane wrong. It's Titan. This entire time.
Okay,
I'm
Titan.
Like, okay, what? But I've obviously, we're not French, so we don't know. But apparently I was listening to that, and they were mentioning it along those lines, that's the pronunciation, and I had my mind blown. It was like I learned something new for the first time.
Oh, okay.
So it's Titan, so T, and then
Ton.
So there we go. Malcolm, I see what you did there. We all have underneath our little lower thirds, and I see what you did there, Malcolm Leiter. Tell me, sir, what have you watched this past week?
Yeah, aside from No Time to Die, I actually finally got around to seeing Shang-Chi, and I really loved that. I mean, as much as all the bad things I've heard about Venom 2, I can't wait to see it, but it doesn't come out till November for me, so still got a while to wait. But aside from that, I've watched a whole bunch of horror movies this week because I'm doing a horror series on Rankin. But
he is. Go give it a watch on your YouTube channel. No Take 3 production.
But aside from all that, some new ones I watched that on Netflix. I watched the Escape the Undertaker interactive movie, and that is a lot of it's definitely based on the WME characters, like the New Day visit at the Undertaker's house, and it's a very interactive thing which Netflix does really well. Without spoiling what it does, when you first start it, it will give you the option to enter the house or say I'm too scared. Pick the I'm too scared option. You will still get to watch it. It's a fun Easter egg and a lot of. I'm not going to spoil what it does. You need to experience it yourself. And the other one I watched the Star Wars Terrifying Tales Lego thing on Disney Plus, and I mean, just like the holiday special last year, it was fun. I mean, It's not going to be in my top 10 movies of this year, but it's a lot of fun.
Sad. Well, no, I think that I saw it and I forgot about it. Thank you for reminding me that that exists. I need to go back and give that a look because the holiday special I thought was cute. It's fine for what it is. I think it's something that I want to check out for that one. And I know you love Venom, so I know you're really excited to see Let There Be Carnage, and I can't wait. The moment you see Venom, Malcolm, let us know because I want to hear your thoughts so desperately.
I mean, the only reason I want to see it is for the mid-credits, which is what I think everyone's going to see it at the moment. I think
Well,
That's the best part about the movie, Malcolm.
It's the possibility that transpires after it, but that's all we're gonna say. Nothing else after besides that. So before I go on a list, I want to be able to hear, Joe, what have you seen this past week, other than, of course, No Time to Die?
Well, not Venom, because again, that's not out over here just yet. So still waiting for that one. But we're in the heart of spooky season, October, and we're also right in the heart of tournament season for some of the movie trivia leagues. So it's been a mixture of horror movies and movies for study purposes. But a couple of newer horror movies. So I watched ICU, which is currently on Netflix. Which came out, which had Helen Hunt in it, which had quite a few twists in it. I didn't really hear a lot about it when it came out, but it was actually there was one twist, and then there was another one, and I didn't see them coming, and I actually really enjoyed it. Good again, just a good 90 minutes worth of.
Did ICU come out this year?
2019 that came out.
Okay.
And then some other ones first. I also watched 2014's Creep, found footage film. Again, that was a nice sort of surprising one, sort of slipped under the radar a little bit, which I really enjoyed. There's some other not so good ones I had to watch just purely for trivia purposes, which mostly some horror, some Disney. We had Race to Witch Mountain with Dwayne The Rock Johnson. And that was fine. That was fine. Jason Takes Manhattan, where he's sort of in Manhattan for about 20 minutes, but it is what it is. Inspector Gadget.
Matthew Broderick, that one from the 90s.
That would be the one. The Dream Child, A Nightmare on Elm Street 5, The Dream Child. And I don't mind those. I like anything where they get creative with the dreams. I quite enjoy. And clearly, Robert Englund's still having the time of his life doing them. So that's always any time we see an actor that's clearly enjoying it. It's like Daniel Craig in Knives Out, stuff like that. When clearly the actor's having a fun time, you're usually in for at least a half decent time. And then the two sort of ends of the spectrum on what I watched this week, we had Artemis Fowl from 2021, which exists. And then the other end of the spectrum, I watched George A. Romero's Dawn of the Dead from 1978, which was fantastic. Really enjoyed it. Always good to see something. I'd never seen it before. I'd seen Night of the Living Dead, but I hadn't seen the original Dawn of the Dead. So I made sure I checked that out. And the last one I watched, another Disney Plus drop, I watched Muppets Haunted Mansion.
Oh, how is that?
It's the Muppets. It's always good fun, but like every Muppet movie, there's not enough Swedish Chef.
Travesty. One of the best characters. Genuinely, I mean that. One of the best characters.
He's my favorite Muppet, so that's why I always bring it up.
You should, as you should, Joe, as you should. I need to add that to the list. That's also on Disney Plus, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Future rank top 12 Muppets.
Oh yes. Swedish Chef is definitely be up there. Wow. Okay. So now I'm over here thinking, like, I'm hearing all these, and I'm like, oh, I need to watch some of these. I've avoided Artemis Fowl, so now I'm over here like, man, do I want to see it?
You don't need to watch it.
I don't need to, but I'm so curious what Kenneth Branagh apparently didn't do with that movie.
I mean, the question is, what did he do with that movie?
Fair. That's a fair assessment. So for me, when I was able to watch, I spent most of my time this past week. It was a hectic week with work, so I wasn't able to, a lot of overtime, so I wasn't able to see too many movies, but I managed to devote my time to an episode a day or 2 episodes a day of Midnight Mass on Netflix. And while this is, we talk about movies, like, I consider this to be almost a 7-hour movie. Miniseries are like a bread and butter when it comes to me personally, because I know there's an end date and there's not necessarily a show I got to catch up on. And Netflix is really good. While I'm not usually a binger much anymore for time's sake, I try to watch as much as I can. And Midnight Mass is just Mike Flanagan stretching his beautiful like horror genre chops when it comes to telling a really complete and almost soul crushing introspective journey. It's not even like a full-fledged horror film in the traditional sense. There's no like until you get to like the very end, really. It's more of a very slow burn, but it works incredibly well. It's an introspective look upon faith and blind zealotry. And I think as does a really great job of both being like, hey, you know, this is what happens when you blindly follow anyone or anything. And I think because he put his heart and soul into this, while I love Bly Manor, I love Hill House, this has a much deeper personal message, I feel like, from Mike Flanagan. And I would recommend anyone who has ever struggled with their faith in the past or even has no faith to go and give this a look, and listen and a watch, because I think it's just a beautiful, like from acting, cinematography, directing, writing. Yes, they do a lot of monologues, but I feel like that's usually Mike Flanagan's type of style, but I love it. I think it's something we should all go see. Oh, Dan, yes, you had your finger up.
I want to ask you, I mean, we do this is an awards show.
Yes.
Is Linklater, does he have a legitimate shot of getting a nomination for an Emmy?
For miniseries, if they
Or
campaign
made
him
for TV movie, yeah.
if they campaign him properly, because his performance as someone who has been to many a churches, whose own mother is a ordained minister, like
I'm a Catholic.
that is he
He's
managed to
amazing.
get that down
He
pat.
was incredible.
I was on every single word that he was saying, to the point where I'm like, yeah, I'd follow you. I'd follow you anywhere. You're so charismatic, but you're also a tortured soul. And I appreciate the complexity your character has. He's fantastic. I love the acting is bar none is phenomenal, but
And
him
the
in particular.
the assistant,
I
was
hate
she
her.
wild? Was she wild or
hate
what?
her.
Oh, she's so good. She was almost as bad as like Ratchet from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's
Yeah, she's
Nest.
basically
And
a
that-
religious zealoted Ratchet.
I was like,
That's what she
wow, this
was.
is great. She's amazing. You know? Yeah,
And
all the
everyone-
characters are so intriguing and
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah.
And it does so many interesting things that you don't expect, because I knew nothing except that I knew Mike Flanagan did it. That's all I knew going into it, and I was excited. So go in with as little expectations, you'll be blown away, because it does not go any way you expect it. If of course you're into, you know, even if you're not into horror that much, you doesn't really get into those elements till later in the season, and by that time you're really invested in the characters and their journeys on this island. But yeah, Midnight Mass is something I really devoted my time to this past week.
Only one episode in.
What happened?
Go.
Two people are speaking at once. I couldn't hear.
Sorry, go ahead, Malcolm, and then Joe.
Mike Flanagan's doing an adaptation of the House of Usher next.
Yep.
Anything he does, I'm totally on board for. Joe, what'd you say?
So I'm one episode into Midnight Mass at the moment, and I will be continuing because I am already intrigued.
It is very. It gets.
It's a
It
slow
will
burn.
be slow.
It's a slow burn, man. But
Yes.
keep going. Keep going.
Oh, I will be.
All right.
It
They
is.
go by quick. Once you start, boom, boom, boom,
They
boom,
go.
boom.
What is your opinion on Hill House and Bly Manor? Have you enjoyed those in the past, or have you not even seen those?
I was a very big fan of Hill House. Bly Manor didn't quite work for me.
Yeah, same.
But I still enjoyed watching it. I thought Hill House was in my opinion was a superior show. I really engaged with that, and it was definitely a binge. And I think we all had the same reaction to the one moment with the backseat of the car, because that was yeah. I think everyone knows that moment.
Having flashbacks over here are gonna have a heart attack midstream.
But he also did Dr. Sleep and Gerald's Game, and two great movies.
One of the most interesting voices in horror nowadays.
Yeah.
Truthfully, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
But anyway, yeah. Those. Oh, I guess I also saw The Guilty as well too on Netflix finally.
Oh, that's right.
It's good.
Same here.
It's good. It's definitely.
It's not as good
Jake
as the
Gyllenhaal-
original.
I have not seen the original as a thing.
Oh my God! You should have definitely see the original, and you'll see that this one doesn't stand up to it. But it's not that it's bad; it's just the original
pales.
Yeah, and a lot of times those Swedish, boy, they just get it. The Swedish versions,
The
of
Swedish
these movies,
filmmakers.
I mean, it's like what, and then we try to copy them, and it's like it's just not the same to me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
No, and I'm definitely intrigued by it. I think again, what sold it for me was Jake Gyllenhaal's performance. Like he easily is the best thing about that entire. The voice acting, even too, in there is also really, really good. Like again, while the writing and like everything around it's kind of meh, Jake Gyllenhaal and the voice cast is what sells The Guilty.
Yeah, I mean, what did he do? Did he have to do? Was he doing this during the pandemic? Is
Yes.
this something he did right during the middle where there was nobody around
Yes.
except for what's his face, Tostitos, whatever, Allstate guy next to him?
I don't. Is that the Allstate?
Yeah,
What?
Rogers. He wears a cheese head. Rogers.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's the Allstate guy, and he was also in Lady and the Tramp. So I mean,
I didn't know that either.
yeah.
No, but like, Anton Fuqua apparently was tested positive for COVID, or either that, or he had come into contact with someone who had COVID, so he had to socially distance, and in a truck, he basically gave him his direction. So I think that's fascinating. The fact that this is truly a pandemic-made movie, and you can kind of tell, but it's still, again, Jake Gyllenhaal to me sells it. I love him as an actor, and I will watch anything that he does. I mean, I like it, but I will give it a try.
Well, I love the archival footage of the fires. Not that I want to see Los Angeles burn, but they had all the screens with the fires and the cars, and I was like, okay, that adds a little bit of production value to it, you know?
Agreed. However, we have talked long and hard about what we've seen. It's time to get into the meat of this discussion over here, kind of setting the stage. This past year, well, actually, geez, this was in 2019. I believe it was originally supposed to come out until Danny Boyle left the project originally when they had this going on for No Time to Die. So 2019 came and went. The pandemic occurred. 2020 came and went. It moved back twice. And finally, No Time to Die came out this past month. We'll say this month because, you know, it staggered itself out for every few weeks, depending on your market. But No Time to Die finally had its release. And ladies and gentlemen, we got to say goodbye. This is no spoilers, of course, because it's the final. We knew this was the final Daniel Craig movie, but we got to see the final goodbye, the swan song of Daniel Craig as James Bond. And what I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, when it comes to years, the longest stretch of time anyone has been in the Bond mantle. So just think,
15 years.
That is a. I tip my. If I had a hat, I'd be tipping it. Could you tip your hat for me, Dan, so I can symbolically?
But didn't Connery do something in the 80s and in a bunch in the 60s?
If we count that, but it's not in the official Eon.
All right.
That's another discussion.
Yeah.
All right.
That's a part of that.
Don't worry.
But No Time to Die made its official release in October of 2021 after being pushed back multiple times. I remember when we had this discussion here on Gone with the Wind about being pushed back. When we brought ourselves back from a hiatus when the pandemic started to truly rage, and they kept pushing it back. And I think this movie was one of the first movies to actually be pushed back. And now we finally get to see it. As our friend and fellow Take 3 member, Matt Curran, says, I believe it when I'm in the theater and actually watching it. And all four of us here on the podcast actually finally got to see and watch it. And now we're going to tell you our thoughts. So Dan, tell us, what are your thoughts? Spoiler free, of course, just general thoughts of the long-awaited No Time to Die. Were you just dying to see it?
I'll tell you what. When the press screening came available, I made sure that at 3 p.m. on Tuesday afternoon, I was at that theater with about 6 other people because I was not going to miss that movie. I wasn't going to wait another week and a half to see it. When my press screening was like a week and a half away from when the movie actually came out, I was like, I ain't messing around. And I told you guys that week on the pod, I said, I get to see this on Tuesday. And you're like, oh man, I'm so jealous. But I'll tell you what, and I wrote my review about this, you know, and hopefully people that read my review, they didn't get spoiled by anything. I try not to spoil anything in my review, but the action sequences are incredible. There's a scene where they're literally trapped in a car and they're just shooting them like crazy. And somehow they escape with cars around them, shooting them. And it was like, I mean, like, this is Bond at the top of Bond. I mean, this is the kind of he would be the only one to be able to escape this, you know? And I love that action scene was incredible. And then he's riding a motorcycle up stairs and all over the place. Some of the action sequences in this movie are some of the best I've seen in any Bond movie, let alone Daniel Craig Bond movies. The beginning sequences of the Bond movies are some of the some memorable things. And this one had one that was very different than other, but it was still a memorable beginning sequence because it starts out with the villain, which you don't usually see that. The beginning sequence is starting out with the main villain, you know, but it ties the rest of the films together into this one, and it ties this whole 5-film arc in a bow. It's like, oh, we have the beginning, Casino Royale, we have the end, No Time to Die. And they really threw that in your face in this film. This is the ending, and this is going to be the ending of Daniel Craig, and this is the end of this era of James Bond. And it was the 25th James Bond. We're going to get a 26th down the road. Probably Danny Boyle will be directing that one. I think it made sense to have somebody that can tie this film into the other films. I don't know, maybe you guys know this, but is this going to be the last of Ben Whishaw, Naomi Harris, Ralph Fiennes? Are we done with them? Are they completely gone?
No
Are they
idea.
going to move? Are they going to somehow tie them into the next one by putting them in another film? They're some of the best parts about this 5-arc Bond, in my opinion. And they were really great in this movie. I loved them in this movie, and I love the new characters in this movie. They brought back Leah Seydoux' character from the previous movie. She's fantastic. I'll tell you, Ana de Armas is in this movie. I'll tell you what, so funny. Some of the stuff that she's involved with is so funny. I really enjoyed her. But the thing that really hit it home and hit it out of the park for me is just how the Daniel Craig Bond character is closed out. And I just think they did it with such grace and with such professionalism. And, you know, Aeon Productions and the Broccolis, they weren't going to drop the ball on this one. And at the end of this movie, I walked out and I said, this, and I have a soft spot, maybe, you know, this is a controversial subject maybe, but I have a soft spot for Roger Moore and Octopussy because that was the first Bond I ever saw in a theater, Octopussy. And
you never forget your first James Bond movie, that is.
And I have a twin brother, and I love the evil twins, and I love Maud Adams and Octopussy because she was the villain in this one, in that one, and one of the previous ones. She was one of the regular good Bond girls, not a bad.
Hold on, wait, Dan, do you have a twin brother?
Yeah, I have a twin brother.
How did I just know you have a twin brother today?
I don't know.
So all this time, it could have been you coming up, and he could have been your twin brother. We never knew it. I'm sorry.
No. But so I have a soft spot for Roger Moore and Octopussy. But I walked out saying Daniel Craig is now my favorite James Bond, and I believe strongly that Daniel Craig is the best James Bond we've ever gotten. And it's not because he's the last James Bond we've ever got. I just believe all the way around the things, and you know, I've heard some controversial things about Daniel Craig as James Bond, but I think he's a human James, a Bond you could relate to as on a lot of human levels, and that's what I like about Daniel Craig as James Bond, and some of the things that he went through as this character throughout the 5 movies. You know, I gave it a 4.5 stars. I think it's a great movie, and I'm not going to get into any awards talk now because obviously that we're going to talk about that later.
No, I think you had mentioned prior that the James Bond movies have fantastic opening sequence, fantastic prologues. That's how they grab you. I remember even looking back at
Billie
Casino
Eilish,
Royale.
I loved her song too.
That too. That's another thing. But like you look back at like something like Casino Royale and those quote unquote parkour chase, as it's been lovingly referred to as.
God, I love that.
Fantastic. This one to me stands above, even though it's probably the longest I think we've had prologue wise when it comes to James Bond. But the way that it sets up a flashback and then in a very menacing, almost horror type elements, moving into a full on action set piece.
Yeah.
The entire town is an action set piece. And having that relationship between,
and it throws back to Italy, which we've had. Italy is like kind of a backdrop for some of these Bond, Daniel Craig specifically Bond movies, you know?
Hmm. And I think they do such an incredibly fantastic job. And for that first 25 minutes or however long 20 minutes that is peak, what Bond can be. And I absolutely love and adore those first 20 minutes. The rest of the film starts to get a little messy for me. I think where the film starts to, I think I'm very high on the film. The film starts to lose me when it gets to really convoluted with its plot, and it's very, it for a movie that's almost 3 hours. It feels like it rushes through a lot of different characters and a lot of different
245.
situations. Exactly, it's incredibly long, and it's not arduous to get through. I never looked at my time, but because it flew by very quickly. But at the same time, some of these characters, I just wish I had more time to, talk to see, they felt like they were trying to do too much. The quote of "have your cake and eat it too," but in this case, the cake was tell a complete Bond story, but also make it the final movie for Daniel Craig and what he has to offer as a tenure as Bond. I absolutely love Craig, and the highlight of this movie to me is Daniel Craig and the emotional hoops that he has put through, the waves that he has to go through. Yes, Dan, the waves he has to go through, and what director Cary Joji Fukunaga, excuse me, does is, to me, some of the best different types where we delve into the psyche of James Bond as more than just a caricature that we've seen in the past, a cultural caricature where he's like this suave,
Debonair
character. Yeah, debonair. Like, not he's not that, but he's more than that behind that. And they do some really interesting things. I know Daniel Craig has never been everyone's cup of tea, or at least this interpretation for many James Bond fans. But for me personally, this is to me what makes him a really more interesting character. Like, so that final battle scene in Skyfall and the set piece, to me, cemented like this is James Bond's past and made us connect to him even further as a character. It deepened him, and No Time to Die does that even further. Well, I think everything around him, including Rami Malek's villain, Rami Malek's not bad. His character is written poorly, is what I'll say. They don't give him enough time. I think he's really interesting. What he's doing is very classic Bond villain. Like, I'm ready for him just to say, "No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die," in the Goldfinger type of way. He gets that down, but I feel like he's let down like many of the other scripts are, or many other characters are, and that's by the script, which kind of drops the ball with a very convoluted plot. It doesn't really seem to, it seems like they're trying to do way too much and juggle this, and it feels both overstuffed but at the same time really underserved for a lot of these characters who are not named James Bond. But some fantastic set pieces and moments in between, and you can like the ones with Ana de Armas, as you said, Dan. Some of the great interactions they had with like Q and Moneypenny. Even the relationship, which I didn't buy much in Spectre, between Lea Seydoux' character Madeleine Swann and Daniel Craig's James Bond. I didn't buy it that much in Spectre, but this one, they did a lot better job. And I think it really highlighted by both their quality as actors, where I believed it. Even if I did question it sometimes, it worked incredibly well. So overall, I'm very positive on this. It's a slightly messy movie, but it has a great sense of heart and depth when it comes to the character of James Bond. And I really appreciate that. Malcolm, for you, I can tell you're ready to start jumping. What is your thoughts on James Bond?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know what to expect going into this, because quite often if a movie gets sort of pushed, it does make you worry about how good it actually is. But I was pleasantly surprised with this, because this was a lot of fun, and I'm kind of glad they didn't try and release this in the middle of a pandemic, especially with this main
Oh, yeah.
storyline that they did with this, with a whole virus taking out the world.
Oh, the nanobites. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that kind of would have been a really weird movie to drop in the pandemic, and if they had some weird movies dropped during the pandemic, as it was.
Yes, they did.
But yeah, and one thing I actually found out is this is the first Bond movie since License to Kill in which we see M, Q, Moneypenny, and Felix Leiter in the same movie together.
Really?
Yeah, I was looking up online. It's like, I can't remember where I read it, but they said it's the first time those four characters have been in the movie together since License to Kill. So
Yeah.
I mean,
Leiter wasn't in the last one, right?
No,
And the other three were. The other three were. So this is the first
Yeah.
time in this.
he wasn't. So we hadn't seen Leiter since Quantum of Solace.
Yeah.
But it was
Yeah.
Skyfall where they introduced Moneypenny and Q, the new ones. So yeah, and he hasn't. And
Yeah.
they had they had Joe Don Baker's Jack Wade in Pierce Brosnan's instead of Felix Leiter. So he was like the replacement.
Wow. I forgot it hasn't been since Quantum of Solace. Holy cow.
Yeah.
You're right.
But when he
Yeah.
pops up, you remember him right away.
David Harbour's in.
Yeah.
I mean, and I'm not going to lie. It took me a while to recognise who the actor was that was playing. Like, that voice has like, oh yeah, it's the Watcher from Watcher.
Yeah.
Jeffrey Wright's
Jeffrey
the
Wright.
Watcher.
Jeffrey Wright is fantastic.
I would say
Yeah.
that was my one of my most exciting casting news from the Batman was go, oh, Jeffrey Wright's going to be Jim Gordon. Yeah, I see it. I 100% see it. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
definitely.
absolutely.
But yeah, I don't know if we're quite getting into spoilers yet, but the ending kind of surprised me with how they chose to end this Bond arc for Craig.
Yes.
Because because especially when you finish watching the credits, and it does have yeah, but we'll get into that later.
I will say real fast before I let Joe take the floor for his overall thoughts. The ending is really interesting, and I can't wait to talk about that till after we give our initial thoughts, because while in the moment, to me, I saw it and it felt so emotionally fulfilling for the overall story, it raises a lot of questions upon what does this mean for James Bond in the future and for the Bond character and his world. But we'll talk about that in a little bit. But I want to bring in, I'm going to call you our resident James Bond expert, Joe. Is that okay?
That works for me.
Perfect. Our resident James Bond expert Joe. What are your thoughts on the highly anticipated, long-awaited, pushed back, No Time to Die?
I think, like Malcolm said, I think when movies keep getting pushed back, and I know that the Barbara Broccoli was adamant this was not going to streaming in any way, shape, or form. It does make you think, do they not want this to come out? But I thoroughly enjoyed this movie.
Nice.
As I said, I'm a big James Bond fan. I've been a very big fan of Daniel Craig. Casino Royale remains my favorite James Bond movie. I think it's just a phenomenal film, and Skyfall is very close behind. Admittedly, the film has only just come out, and there is an element of recency bias in there. So I will wait. But just on an update, just on a rough ranking of where I'd put it. No Time to Die made my top 5 Bond films of all time, and
wow.
This is a movie that a lot of people say things about Bond films that, well, this happens, this happens, this happens, this happens. It's Bond. It happens in different ways, but these things all happen. And what's different here is this is a movie that really isn't afraid to take some quite big swings and things that swings and risks that if you just read, if someone just told you this happens in the movie, this happens in the movie, you go, oh, really? But I think the execution is phenomenal. I think they execute a lot of this movie superbly. And admittedly, Rami Malek doesn't get a lot to do. But I think what the movie is trying to do, you have to have that villain within a Bond film. But it's sort of not about that. So he does what he can with what he has. But he really is secondary to this. But the villain is secondary to this. And I was really impressed throughout. The main spoiler free we can give is that Billie Eilish's song is it's a real Bond song. It feels like a James Bond song. I'm a really big fan of this one. I think Hans Zimmer nails the score. I think real care went into making this movie. I think everyone behind the camera and in front of the camera was aware of what they were doing with this movie. And I think Daniel Craig especially showed. If anyone's seen the Being James Bond documentary where he gives that farewell speech on the last day of shooting, you can see how much he cares about what he's doing here, and it really does show. And I think everything from the score to the really subtle nods to everything that's come before in the last coming up to 60 years next year it really does show. And I'm really, really impressed with it. And I actually think if on rewatches, it may go higher than 5, which is where it's currently sitting in my ranks. I think it may go higher. And there's part of me that goes, a lot of this movie might even put it at 1.
Oh, wow.
But again, that is there was a lot of anticipation behind this movie because of the delays.
Of course.
And I think it's stuck the landing in the way that people for a long time have been waiting for the MCU to stick the landing with Endgame. And I think No Time to Die sticks that landing in pretty much a very similar style, in that we were waiting for it for a long time and it might not have lived up to the hype. And I think No Time to Die really does. And I think everyone working on it should be very proud of what they've come up with here.
And so you had mentioned that Joe, that James Bond, well, Daniel Craig as James Bond has been one that you have universally loved. And I think everyone is getting at, all four of us, is that Daniel Craig is the highlight when it comes to just what he's able to bring and the character arc that they give him fully and completely. And I think that when we're going to look back, there are some elements, you're right, that make this, it could be number one. There's also some other elements that might bring it down a little bit, so it won't be the number one. But that's what I'm gathering that you're saying. And you're right, there are some
it's
great
currently
moments.
The third best Craig for me. But
Yes.
Again, it could, because I've said Casino Royale was my one. I think Skyfall was really good. But again, going into the care behind it, even if it's just his interactions with Ana de Armas, I think maybe that benefited as they just come off Knives Out and they had that chemistry. But it works. It really does work. And it's just the little things like that. It had a lot. I mean, pandemic caused a lot of problems in a much bigger ways. But it did cause problems for this movie's release. And I think for what it had going wrong for it, I think everything within the movie and behind the camera that's what it had going right for it.
No, I completely agree. And Malcolm, question for you. You had mentioned prior when you were talking about your review, talking about James Bond. This is something that you said, if people push this back, it may not be good. We were in the middle of the pandemic. They wanted to capitalize upon that. And do you feel like now that you have seen it, looking back, and you think it's really fun and exciting and engaging, how do you feel like this sets as a swan song to the character? Obviously, we're not going to go to spoilers just yet. We're almost there. But how is this as a swan song to the character of Daniel Craig's James Bond specifically? Because to me, it always seems like Daniel Craig put a glove. He's like he's putting a glove on once again. It form fits to him. He knows exactly what it's like. And to me, he gets that down because this is a character he's inhabited for so long. But what about you, Malcolm? What do you think?
Yeah, this definitely worked as a great sort of ending for Craig's Bond. Like, and I mean, it ended on a good note for Craig. It didn't end on a Quantum of Solace movie, which I got a feeling, because when it comes to Craig Bonds, like Casino Royale, Skyfall, and this one are probably the better ones.
Yes.
You got is one of those ones, like every second one of Craig's wasn't that great, which is an interesting thing to think about.
And I think that's one of the things that got my hopes up for it, because when the producers and the actors were talking about this movie coming up, they were very open in the fact that they don't think Quantum of Solace was great. They don't think Spectre was the right movie to end on. And I think that's what gave me the hope, even going into this, because they're acknowledging that the stuff they worked on wasn't up to scratch, and they think this is. I think that in itself was very telling. I mean, Quantum of Solace was hit by the writer's strike, which affected a lot. And I think Spectre tried very hard to tie these movies together, and it was messy. But somehow this managed to tidy up a lot of that mess, which in itself is very impressive.
Which I will add to that, actually. You mentioned how this managed to tidy it up. Spectre, I actually like Spectre more than a lot of people.
I like it, but
yeah,
it's middle. It's very middle.
I actually like Solace, Quantum of Solace, a little bit better than Spectre.
Really?
There's some redeeming qualities in Quantum of Solace, and I'm a big fan of Matthew Almeric. I like him as an actor.
My real issue with Quantum of Solace, and it ties into No Time to Die in a big way, is that Quantum of Solace is the shortest Bond movie.
Yeah.
But
is it?
Watching it doesn't feel that way for me. But this is the longest.
and one of the worst deaths. I mean, one of the
And
most
does not feel
painful,
like
worst deaths in Quantum of Solace. That death by Gemma Arterton. Oh God, one of the most brutal deaths. Ooh,
Very brutal.
God.
But no, that's really interesting because this Quantum of Solace felt like the same time as No Time to Die. Like literally, it feels like you could be the same thing because they move at very different pace, obviously, but they feel like they could be almost the same length, unless you actually look at it and you're like, nope, this running time is very wildly different.
Yeah.
I think one of the things you point
it's
out,
an
I love
hour's
Spectre.
difference. There is an hour's difference.
An hour's. Wow,
Yeah.
that's crazy.
146 is Quantum of Solace.
Wow, that is literally an hour difference. That is amazing. Almost an hour difference.
Yeah.
To the dot. I think Spectre works well from a technical standpoint. Like you look at it, it's gorgeously shot. Some of the cinematography by Hoyt van Hoytma is chef's kiss.
And the action sequences are great because
yes.
that's what they had written when the writers went on strike. They had the action sequences written.
Interesting. Wow. But
it was the story that went around those sequences.
If you look back over at like Spectre, there are some great ideas that they did for Spectre. Great ideas. It's the execution that really started to really sour. And you're right. I didn't know they said, actually, Joe, that they said that it was not a good way to end this. I didn't know that they actually said that. And it makes a lot of sense because you could have ended with Spectre, but why would you want to end with
And I
Spectre?
have a lot of respect for people who will, when they will come out and say, you know what, we worked on this. It wasn't our best work.
Mm-hmm. And I think also that you're right as well, that they improved some things from Spectre. And one of those biggest things to me was the Madeleine Swann and James Bond relationship. What do you all think about that relationship? Because at its heart, this is I'm not sure who it was. Maybe it was Ann Thompson. I was listening to the podcast from IndieWire, and they said that how this is almost a romance in a way, because at its core, it's about Bond letting go of his past and going into the future with Madeleine Swann. And the rockiness that goes along the way. So what do we think about that chemistry? Because I've seen some complaints about people saying the chemistry, wasn't really there. I didn't see it in Spectre. I saw it a little more in this, and their performance has really elevated that. But what were your thoughts on that core relationship between these two characters and Madeleine Swann as a character who I thought was vastly improved in comparison to Spectre?
I think the chemistry is definitely improved. I think Daniel Craig's best chemistry with anyone any female he's worked with in this is with Eva Green.
Yep, I was waiting for someone to say that.
And his chemistry with Eva Green is phenomenal. I think this movie does a lot more than Spectre to show why Bond would leave MI6 and retire to leave and start a new life with Madeleine. I think Spectre doesn't do the best job at cementing that, but just from their very early scenes together before the action really starts, I think you can see that any potential that was there in Spectre has been realized, and that the dust has settled, and they are much more comfortable with each other as not just as actors, but as characters as well.
Yeah, and that definitely shines through. Dan, what were you going to say?
No, I mean, I believe this relationship was real. I honestly believed this relationship was real. And I binge watched all the other movies the day after I saw this, all 4 of them. And they were all fresh in my mind. And I believed by the time I walked out of this movie that this is a real relationship, that these two people were in love and that they really meant something to each other by the end of that movie. And that's something that was one of the best parts about the movie, that you could say, okay, love, there's real love here between these characters. And to touch on something that Joe said earlier, they do the callbacks to the previous Bond movies with the cars. I loved how they used the cars.
Yeah. No
that
spoilers.
Cool.
The Vantage from The Living Daylights is in there. That's very in the trailer. And obviously the DB5 is the classic of all time. But yeah,
I love it.
It's the little things like that, and there's some more stuff. This is not going to be a spoiler. It is, but it's definitely nothing that's going to ruin anything for everyone. I like the fact that when you see Felix Leiter, the cigars he is smoking are Delectados, which are the cigars that Bond has made for him in Cuba in Die Another Day.
Really?
It's a very small. You just see it on the label of the cigar when it's picked up, and I went, okay, so even something small as that, it just shows some care and some thought went behind what they were doing. And to talk more on Bond and Madeleine's relationship, I think I will save this for the spoilers. But there's something else about this movie that I think does establish that emotional connection to them within this movie, which a little bit more of a spoiler. So when we go into that, I usually divulge a bit more.
Yeah, but the other thing interesting about having those specific cigars in that scene, the opening scene, the first time we see Bond in this movie, he's in Cuba, I believe, because they mentioned about being in Cuba.
Jamaica.
He's in Jamaica.
Okay.
But he does go to Cuba.
He does go to Cuba very soon afterwards.
Yeah.
I was around that area.
True. But making a comment quickly before we actually go into spoilers, I want to talk about their relationship, and just to expand upon the fact of what you were saying, because you're right. I'm really honing in on what you were saying, Joe, about how this improved a lot of the things in Spectre, and maybe that made Spectre more favorable in my eyes, because this does a really seamless job of making kind of some of the more stuff palatable from Spectre and expanding that relationship that I was kind of meh on and into something that felt real, and they had a connection, albeit it wasn't the same chemistry as Eva Green. I was waiting for someone to say that. I'm glad someone else said it, because everyone kind of knows that's the case, but they do a good job regardless. And while I wasn't always the biggest fan of like some of the other side characters, I feel like what Lea Seydoux does for Madeleine Swann with what she's given does a really great job. And is probably second best in show, outside third, because Jeffrey Wright as Felix is that's also really good. But the Ana de Armas, that's also great. See, there's a lot of great turns from the supporting cast, even if they don't have a lot to do.
Even Billy Magnuson, I thought, he has a very small role, but even he, again, understood the job. He understood the assignment.
Yep, he understood the assignment. I wish that, because that action scene is not as interesting as some of the other ones, I will say, because it's really good. That's one of my downsides of the movie, is that I feel like some of those characters, we didn't get enough screen time, in the sense of like, they feel very much like, but wait, that was very fast. We just saw them. What? Because they spent so much time building up James Bond and Madeleine and their relationship, but it works at the end of the day. And it really makes it feel like they have a connection, and makes that connection kind of elevate Bond's character to more than just this, as I've said before, a cultural caricature of suave, womanizing, drinking, bang bang shoot 'em up type of assassin that he is. He's more than that, and I do appreciate that.
And that shot, that iconic James Bond shot, is in the movie.
They use that. I saw that and I loved it.
Yeah, that was amazing.
One thing I wasn't thrown off, because I'm so used to the opening things having the Bond running in, shooting in, and you see blood coming down, but they didn't do that. They just sort of made ice and just went into their opening scene with Saffron. It's like, I was thrown off a little bit, because I was like, where's the blood?
Something you don't hear every day. Where's the blood? Yeah, and quickly, last thing we'll talk about before we go into spoilers is just from a technical standpoint. This is Linus Sandgren, who did the First Man, La La Land, Damien Chazelle's DP. Tom Cross, who is also Damien Chazelle's editor, worked with Cary Joji Fukunaga, and I think this combination from production design, this is the Daniel Craig era it's been a bevy of riches when it comes to just technical prowess. Skyfall, while I think is the best shot, I want to highlight just to say how, because it's Deakins. We all, bow, Father Deakins. We bow before thee. Blessed be his name. But what are y'all thoughts on the technical aspect before we get into the actual meat of the spoilers? What are the technical aspects to you that really shone? Joe, you talked about Hans Zimmer, and what was that for you, the score and other technical aspects?
Well, the score, for one, I think is it's up there with, I think, Thomas Newman's score for Skyfall, just for the Daniel Craig era, and David Arnold's for Casino Royale. I think Hans Zimmer had a much more interesting job in terms of what he has to do with this score and some of the choices that was made. and I'm a big fan of the choices that were made in this. Technical aspects, the movie it looks gorgeous, and everything from just the sets, the choice of costumes, obviously. And I can't really talk enough about it. I just think it just looks fantastic, and the execution of the action sequences, even just the locations they choose to film in, like Matera in Italy for part of the opening sequence. It's a beautiful looking place, and the way they use it as a character almost it's just phenomenal. And I think we see it in a little bit in the trailer, but obviously it's one of the first times in a Craig movie that we get a proper lair for the villain, which hasn't had in a long time. And even there,
Throw back to an island.
Even
throw
then,
back to an island again.
And again, that's all down to the way this movie was designed, and I can't praise it enough for what it does in terms of just production design, art direction, and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, if I had to pick a couple things that could possibly be nominated for Academy Awards here, I think you got to look at Hoyt van Hoytema's cinematography. I mean, if you look at all the movies going back to Royale, Casino Royale, and then obviously Skyfall, I mean, oh my God. But Hoyt van Hoytema had to meld and make his movie look like the other movies. And he did that, but also
Linus Sandgren. Linus Sandgren's the DP.
Director of photography. It's not
Yes.
Hoyt van Hoytema?
He did Spectre.
Okay, my bad. That's
You're fine,
why
yes.
I had Hoyt van Hoytema in my head. Okay.
It's okay. I wanted to make sure he corrected you right there. Go ahead, Dan.
I'm glad. But the cinematography, wow, fantastic. I would say it's the second best cinematography out of all the Daniel Craig movies, behind obviously Skyfall, which is amazing. So I think if you're looking at awards possibility, cinematography, and to me, they want celebrities singing those damn songs. If they're gonna have live people singing on stage, and they want Billie Eilish on stage singing that song.
Yeah.
I think it's one of the
all
best
the awards,
songs of
I
the
think
year.
that is the most likely, and it is the one it's won, the most times. So I think original song is.
Yeah, I mean, look, we could possibly have Beyonce. We could have Billie Eilish. We could have some heavy hitters this year for best song.
Oh, it's great. I'm excited just to be able to hear that. Malcolm, what were you going to say?
I was going to say, I think in the past few years, as like the original song for Bond is always bound to be nominated. Because I mean they've been nominated for original song a lot of times for the Bond, and especially the last two, Legends of the Wall and Skyfall were both nominated. So I think Billie Eilish has a good chance to be nominated for song.
Sam Smith, I really liked, and obviously Adele. Those two were very, very, very good in my opinion.
Skyfall is great. I will say, we look back at this. Let me rewind that. You actually look back at the statistics. Bond actually has not had a lot of love with the Academy before until we got to.
I think so far. The
Say that again,
franchise is on 15 nominations, I think.
Roughly along those lines, which is not as many as you'd expect. Like the fact that it's won 2 Oscars for song for films back to back. Skyfall was the first time that ever happened. I don't think it really had that many before.
I think it's only had 5 original song nominations in total. I think before Skyfall, I think the last one to be nominated was For Your Eyes Only, which was
that was a while ago.
It was 81.
Was McCartney nominated? Was McCartney? Was that Paul McCartney that did one?
It should.
Yeah, Live and Let Die was nominated.
Okay.
Yeah,
Live and Let Die, The Spy Who Loved Me, For Your Eyes Only, Skyfall, and Spectre were the ones that were writings on the wall, I should say.
This is why he was the winner of the James Bond random match, folks.
The Look of Love from the non-canon Casino Royale was also nominated for Best Original Song.
Huh.
The Bacharach.
Fun fact. Yeah, no, I think that this we're looking for, like, I think just imagine how that would be live, hearing that No Time to Die live because the visuals for that intro, very great. Like the visuals they always manage to do are always very captivating, especially with when they go from the prologue into that with Billie Eilish's vocals mixed in with the way the animations of I'm always looking forward to how they do those intros because they're always so visually appealing and interesting.
Yeah.
But guys, right here, right now, about an hour in, we are going to get into spoilers. So now we can officially talk about all the spoilery things, all the people. Well, if you don't want to listen, skip. So we're going to talk about all the people that die in this movie, because you have 3 main characters bite it. One more so than the other 2 who are bigger, but they're all big in the sense of like they're in the James Bond pantheos. But one in particular is, in fact, the James Bond pantheos. He is the pillar that stands it up. Daniel Craig, James Bond, dies a heroic and tragic death at the very end. Dan, what?
We don't see him die. We don't see him die. There's an explosion.
That bitch
There's
is
an
dead.
explosion.
That bitch is dead.
There's an explosion. There's an explosion.
This is not
We
what I
see an
expected.
explosion. We see an explosion. All right.
Uh-huh.
We see an explosion. We never see a dead body.
They're not going to show his dead body. It's probably blown to smithereens.
I mean, he's standing as the fire engulfs his entire body.
Right,
And
he
that's
did.
the one thing.
Okay,
So-
we're getting another James Bond, number 26.
Oh,
Okay,
They've rebooted it before. And I honestly think that's the direction we're going.
Malcolm, say something. Say what you're going to say, because I want to make a statement so we can have this discussion. Because this is going to be something big. Malcolm, go ahead.
Yeah, what I was about to say is, like, I believe that he's essentially dead. But the thing is, I don't know, because, well, yes, at what Joe was about to say, they have rebooted it before. Because at the end of the credits, it does say James Bond will return, as opposed to saying 007 will return. So they definitely have plans for the James Bond character. If they just said 007, they could have just slapped that moniker onto someone else. And
Naomi.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think this is interesting because they make sure they go out of their way in this movie to let you know, hey, 007 and James Bond are 2 different. It's merely a mantle. And we like it if James Bond has the 007 mantle, but it's not exclusive to him. It's Naomi's. Is it Naomi or
Lashana
Naomi?
Lynch.
Naomi.
Lashana Lynch.
Naomi, thank you.
Naomi is
Naomi.
But I mean,
Lashana Lynch
she gives it back to him.
She does, but now she might get it again now that he's dead.
M might consider retiring it now. He hadn't before, but this time he might.
Yes.
Well,
So
can I just say something about when I walked out of my screen, I had to give my press blurb to the rep, and afterwards, after everybody left, she's a friend of mine, so I asked her about a favor, something that she could do to help me with a personal matter, and she was on the phone with her husband, and she said to her, "Oh, you won't believe it, James Bond is dead, and they replaced him with a black woman." That's what would hurt. So people have this kind of thing in their head. It's like, oh, so this is just not going to go down the way we think it's going to go down because we're fans of this movie and we're fans of this franchise. That normal people are going to look at this and say, "Oh, James Bond's dead," and they replaced him with a black woman. And that's sad that we're still in this kind of thing that's still going on in society,
I'm just going to say they can get over it if they do that. So,
the
go ahead, Joe.
The franchise has survived for 60 years. I'm pretty sure whoever this person was, their opinion,
can survive long
can stand
after.
in the fire with Daniel Craig's James Bond, as far as I'm concerned. But this is what I was saying just about. It's an interesting way to go because you really don't think it's going to happen. And tying sort of everything together, you have Hans Zimmer's score, which throughout this film has been referencing On Her Majesty's Secret Service. And the ending of On Her Majesty's Secret Service is with James Bond's wife being killed by Blofeld. Well, by Irma Bunt's pulling the trigger. Well, on Blofeld orders. And I think throughout that's sort of making you think the same thing is going to happen here and they're going in that same direction.
Mm-hmm.
And when you realize that Madeleine is safe, another thing happens. You have the Bond being infected with the Heracles virus.
Yes.
And at that point, he says, I'm not going to make it. And obviously, it's a Bond movie. So you go, well, he is going to make it. So he's clearly saying, tell her I died. And I won't have to, she won't have to go through the pain. And I won't have to go through the pain of knowing that they still want to see me and all this sort of stuff. And just to pull it off to still go the way they did. I think it surprised me. And when it happened, I wasn't 100% on board with that decision. And I sort of sit there. I sat there through the credits thinking, I really enjoyed this movie. And then the last 10 minutes happened and I'm not sure. And the full words coming up at the end of the credits, James Bond will return. It was like a reassuring pat on the back to say, we're carrying, don't worry. We've got plans.
And did you know Harrison Ford did the same thing going into Force Awakens? It was like, this is it. If I'm in this is going to be it for me. I'm not doing any more of these. Daniel Craig knew I am not doing anymore. I want to go out like a hero. I want to go out whatever.
But what was interesting for me was that the rumor going around was that the creative differences that caused Danny Boyle to leave. The rumor was that he wanted to kill James Bond, and they wouldn't let him. Was the rumor that was?
I don't think that's it anymore, guys.
Yeah, I think you might want to have a look at that one, which I found really interesting. I found really interesting that maybe it's now. I'm really intrigued to know what those differences were, because what we got was, I still think, is a phenomenal movie, and that when I was talking about Hans Zimmer's score there, I think that's one of the things that maybe cements that relationship with Bond and Madeleine, because they're using "We Have All the Time in the World," which was the love song for Bond and Tracy. And I think just having that in the background when they're together, psychologically, for people who are fans of the franchise and have seen all of them numerous times, just gives that little indication that this is their love song, like it was for Bond and the woman he married. And again, speaking about the small references, the opening of the film is Bond visiting Vesper's grave and being attacked by Blofeld. Yeah. Which is reminiscent of the opening of For Your Eyes Only, where he's visiting Tracy's grave and is attacked by Blofeld. Just small little things like that, I think, that, again, is part of the care that went into this movie.
And for me, the surprising reveal in this is Bond having a kid in this, because I think, is this the first time Bond's ever had a kid in a movie?
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
And the funny, this is what the comedy in this one, like, then, and there was this big whole thing. Oh, why did they bring in what's her face to work on the script? Phoebe Waller-Bridge. Well, we all know the parts she worked on. She added these comedical moments, and one of the best comedical moments was when she shows them the kid, and she says, "It's not yours," and the kid looks just like us. Like,
and he even Bond says himself, "Yeah, but the eyes."
Yeah, the eyes.
They make a point to make sure you know that. The eyes. Look at the eyes.
Well, we're all looking at it. We're all like, this is his kid.
And I think Phoebe Waller-Bridge is a phenomenal writer and comedian. I was a huge fan of Fleabag, binged both series straight through. And I was a fan of what she did in Solo, and her voice work is great. Funny enough, I enjoyed her character more having watched Fleabag in between sort of two viewings of Solo.
Those comedic moments were really a nice touch, because this was a very serious movie.
And it was one of the big criticisms of Daniel Craig's sort of era, was that he didn't have the wit of the previous Bonds.
That's true.
But here, even when he kills Blofeld's henchman in the stairwell, showed him your watch, really blew his mind. And I was like,
I loved it.
When have they had Daniel Craig hasn't really had that. Yeah. And he gets to have these moments that tie him to the past, and moments that you go, that is James Bond right there.
The pun.
I mean, and the scene where him and Naomi are walking down the hallway, and like everyone's saying to Naomi, like 007 is like, it's like, does that bother you? It's like that their Bond gets invited to the office first. Does that bother you? Like, just those small
great
moments.
tongue in cheek.
And I think that's one of the good things about casting Lashana Lynch. She's already shown what she can do in things like, just Captain Marvel alone. And I think the whole point of it was, I think a lot of the direction, especially the last 3 Daniel Craig movies, was that The 00s are becoming obsolete. MI6 is becoming obsolete. And yes, you are going to be replaced by what is your polar opposite to demonstrate to Bond that he's obsolete. And I think it even ties back to the sort of the Skyfall reference, is that sometimes the old ways. I think Skyfall was more about how the old ways are the best, and this was more the old ways are sometimes still needed whilst moving forward at the same time.
Yeah.
And I think that's where it really works for me on his personal, just Daniel Craig Bond's personal journey, is that he does seem a bit taken aback, but he's very much on board of saying, well, this is another 00, and I'm going to work with this other 00, and there's
very professional.
There's that friction at the beginning. It doesn't take long for both of them to both of them are very wary of each other, and it doesn't take long for that to sort of dissolve. And you see the journey of it dissolving. I think that's one thing they paid a lot of attention to, is that there was no real animosity getting into the finale of this movie between the two of them, and they both had a lot of respect for each other in that moment.
Yeah, and I like talking about small touches. I love the fact they like had very clearly shown in the shot like a photo of Judi Dench's M on the wall.
And Robert, but weirdly, this is a reboot, and Bernard Lee's portrait was there too.
Yep, I was about to say that because he's also there.
It's one of those ones.
Robert Brown's.
But this being a reboot, Judi Dench is confusing as well, because she was in
she did cross over. She did cross over Pierce Brosnan into Daniel Craig, so that was a tie there.
That's because she's the best M, and there's nothing else.
That's why I asked.
I love Bernard Lee. I love Robert Brown. I love Ray Fiennes, but Judi Dench is M.
Yeah, she's
without
great.
a shadow of a doubt in my mind.
And she was giving him crap. She'd give him crap and stuff, which I loved. You know,
I love that.
Don't ever break into my apartment ever again. You know, don't ever break into my apartment. But that's what I'm saying. Do we M, Q, and Money? Do they cross over? Do they move on to the next one?
Which was going to bring me to the question that I was going to pose to y'all, and that was, with this is a finality. We have had M, we've had Q, we've had these people, Moneypenny, we've had in the past these characters outside of just the character of James Bond kind of intertwine in the past, like they've been played by the same actors, basically, transferring to a new era. If we get Naomi Harris as Moneypenny, if we get Ray Fiennes as M, if we get Ben Whishaw as Q, or we get Lashana Lynch coming back as Naomi, if we get all those, what does that mean for this iteration? Is it just a recast? And I think that kind of brings the idea of Bond has always been a semi-reboot, but not really, because they've always referenced kind of old ways in very tongue-in-cheek, very kind of like, aha, look at this. But the continuity has never been something that you kind of care too much about when it comes to James Bond.
It hasn't been, but I think I've never subscribed to the code name that James Bond is a code name theory. I've never subscribed.
Yes.
And it's purely based on the fact that Roger Moore visits Tracy's grave. Felix Leiter says he was married once and it didn't end well when it comes to Timothy Dalton in License to Kill. So they've always established that this, and Die Another Day, you remember this gadget, and it's all the proof because it was the 20th Bond film. But I think in this case, they rebooted it with Casino Royale. So I think all those sort of cards are off the table. But Skyfall establishes that he grew up James Bond with Kincaid at Skyfall. His parents were Andrew and Monique Bond. So I think you can't really say that it was a code name.
No.
And for me, I think the best direction to go is a softer reboot than Casino Royale was. No, not necessarily an origin story again. We had that 15 years ago. And just, it is a reboot, but he is James Bond. He's 007. He's been 007 for a few years. Here's your new actor, and potentially here is your new M. Fingers crossed. Michael Gambon.
Hey, that wouldn't be too bad.
That's a good question, though. Can I don't take it away from you, Manny.
No, please go ahead. My job was I wanted to pose that question because this obviously they're not looking to any. They basically said we're not looking to replace Bond anytime soon. We're giving Daniel Craig his time in the sun, and then we'll talk about the announcement later. So they're basically giving breathing room in between. And the question more arises: do we want to see these other characters start to transfer over? Because they've basically killed off Felix in this iteration. Would it be weird for the viewers to be like, wait a minute, that's Moneypenny, but what is she? But that's a different James Bond. Do we give credence to the audience to be like, just go with us, or how do we go about doing
Judi
that?
Dench.
No,
Get
I was
on
going
board for this.
I was
Yes,
getting on.
this is
I was
true.
actually getting to something else.
Oh,
Who would we recast?
we'll save
as
that, James Bond. We'll save that for later for our last bit of discussion.
Well,
but
we don't have much time. Me and
we don't have much
Malcolm.
time.
Me and
Oh,
Malcolm.
you guys have to go? Oh, I didn't realize that. My bad. Okay, so before we do that, real fast, what time do you guys have to go?
Soon.
Well, I mean, Classic doesn't start till 6, but so we've got half an hour, so that we could finish up.
Perfect. So then, what I just want to bring that along is the fact of like James Bond. This is a character that we know he's a. You're right, Joe. We had a hard reboot with Casino Royale, so now do we get back to the softer reboot of like how we had for Sean Connery we had Lazenby, but into Roger Moore basically. So do we have something along those lines? And I'm asking for all of y'all. Do we want to see these other characters return, or do we want to kind of have select characters return? Like, for instance, we're not going to have Felix probably the next one, but if we get him the next one after that, what would you guys like to see? Because this does put a wrinkle into. Go ahead.
It's difficult. I think it's a difficult decision to make, because if you do recast them and the casting choices are good and people are on board with them, then I think people will be happy. But then in that same vein, people were perfectly fine with Judi Dench coming back as M. But at that point, it was a very hard reboot, and I think maybe the fans needed something just familiar to latch onto with this, because Casino Royale was very, very different to Die Another Day.
But you got to admit, though,
right
Joe.
reasons.
You got to admit, though, Joe, there was chemistry, and I'm seeing something different. There was chemistry between Naomi Harris and Daniel Craig.
Oh, there was great chemistry.
And Ben Whishaw and him had like a little thing going.
Great.
And then Ralph Fiennes and him had this kind of love-hate relationship type thing going. So they all had their moments with him. And are we going to say, okay, those moments are gone because they're all going to go over here and we're going to start new moments with the new Bond? Or just bring the whole crew, a whole new crew, and the whole 9 yards. Maybe that's where Danny Boyle gets to recast everybody. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, like for me, I don't know so much about who I want as the next Bond. I haven't really thought, but one thing I would like to see a spy movie franchise just focusing on Naomi, and have her spin off into her own series of movies. But a crazy idea.
Anna de Armas's Paloma.
Yes. Great scene, by the way.
I will tell you this, guys. Amazon bought the rights to MGM library. They own all the rights. And then now, in conjunction with that, Amazon is now in business with the Broccolis and Eon Productions. So they have a streaming service, don't they? Guess what? If we could do what's his name? John Krasinski as Jack Ryan show, Lord of the Rings show. Why not a spin-off of James Bond with Lashana Lynch?
And that would then could potentially be its own universe with the spin-off, while you continue with the potentially rebooted Bond.
Yeah, but I mean, a crazy idea I was actually kind of thinking about when it comes to Bond is if they do the next Bond movie, but do it in a Search for Spock type way, and have like maybe Naomi going to the island and finding James Bond's body still sort of breathing, and then but he his face is sort of damaged beyond repair, and then due to the magic of plastic surgery, then that's the way you bring in the new Bond. I mean, it's a crazy idea, but I don't think they will do it. But
He ended up
I
in
will
a
say-
cave underneath the island, a hidden cave underneath the island.
Batman over here, Christian Bale's Batman or something. But no, I was gonna say is like I know Barbara Broccoli. She did an interview a while ago. I believe it was Fandango, and she said there was no current spin-off plans. She says the success of these films is the central character. Explained Broccoli. We have not done a spin-off in the past, and I don't think we have any plans to do it in the future. But who knows? So right now there are no active plans to do that, but we could see how that transpires going forward with, more. I just think that, James Bond being James Bond and having each, movie, it might be personally, that's all that I need because I've become a fan. I'm gonna be real. I've become a fan during the pandemic. I remember watching a couple of James Bond movies at home with my dad when I was little, probably way too young to watch some James Bond movies, but I remember watching it, but really getting into it during the pandemic and binging and watching everything that I missed. This is my first, No Time to Die was my first James Bond film in the theaters because I just never really got the chance to go see it. And I saw it and it was an IMAX. I loved it. Picture crisp. Mwah. First IMAX back since the pandemic. And I think that I think James Bond it's not equivalent to put as in like a Marvel movie. It's not. It is entertainment for a more mature adult audience. Not saying that it can't be for everybody, but it is something to me that is kind of like very classic cinema, but it changes as time goes on. It evolves with the times, but it keeps the core of who James Bond was and is this world of MI6, this world of espionage and 007s and master plots that may not always work.
Locations and
Exactly. It's all of this, but it keeps and it makes things interesting. And like, this is a lot more of I will say, a progressive Bond movie than like even ones we've had in the past. The women are not the traditional James Bond women. Daniel Craig's character is a lot softer of a James Bond than we've had in the past. Things seem a little bit more, as we've said, modern. But that's not a bad thing because James Bond's a character that moves with the times and he adapts. And as you said, Joe, he's been around for 60 years. He'll be around 60 years more because he adapts with the times, but he keeps those things that make him James Bond, a suave, debonair, but also really exciting and ferocious assassin for the British government. And
would you do, Manny, would you do a complete like throwback, go back to the 60s?
No. I wouldn't go back to the 60s. I would keep it as is, like where we are, just keep going and do these soft reboots until ultimately you have to do the Casino Royale and do a hard reboot once again. I don't see there's any need to change. Keep it fresh. Like, I think the introduction of Blofeld in this one, I think was a cool idea. Did it work? No. Inspector, I should say. And in this one, I honestly think that they wasted Blofeld again and was kind of like spoiler alert again. Spoiler, he died, which is kind of like lackluster. I saw that coming a mile away when, she touched his hand. I'm like, oh, he's dead. And it just kind of was like, they kill off Blofeld like that, which is kind of like, I would have preferred it if they gave Blofeld, Christoph Waltz, a second shot instead of Rami Malek and was like, okay, he is the big bad, the author of all his pain or something, because Rami Malek, again, was underserved. But because he had that connection already with Blofeld, maybe they could have utilized that and instead, I don't know, a thought, because I didn't care for Rami Malek that much.
We haven't mentioned it either. We lose Felix Leiter, like we said, and
yeah,
he really does have. I think he has a really good ending. Him and Bond's relationship has always been, his pretty much his best friend,
his only friend, truly,
his only friend.
He technically joins the CIA, right?
Technically,
yeah. And I think their scene together as Felix is leaving this world, I think it's fantastic from both Craig and Wright in that scene. I think they both have a lot to do, and I think they execute it really well.
I was visibly upset when I saw him get shot. I'm like, no way, they're gonna, and that set the tone for what later was gonna be. Oh, they're killing off Bond too. They're just gonna kill off all the main people with Felix, Blofeld, and then Bond, which really touching scene too, because they've worked together for Royale, Quantum, and now I can't believe they didn't have no time. That's just really impressive to see all that. But before we wrap up, because I know you guys have got to get going, we didn't talk much about him. Rami Malek, we all are kind of meh on Rami Malek. Not, I'm guessing. That'll be our last discussion. What they do with his character, I think, is intimidating at the beginning. The mask is really cool. He's very scary. But then he just kind of becomes a traditional Bond villain, and he pales in comparison to the overarching story, which makes sense, but it kind of is lackluster when their big climactic battle occurs and you're like, he's shooting Bond, and it's like, oh, I'm not really as intimidated by you as I really want to be. There's no emotional stakes in comparison to where you are, Joe. But I know you talked about, we'll do Joe, Dan, and then Malcolm, and then we'll wrap it up here. But I want to know your thoughts on Rami Malek and his relationship to the character of Swann, Bond, Blofeld, Spectre, etc.
Rami Malek does really well with what he's given, but but Safin, Lucifer Safin isn't given a lot to do. But I think with what I think this movie was trying to do, I think you couldn't have a Bond movie without the overarching, the arch villain type character, and it doesn't quite. It's not as bad as saying it's shoehorned in, but it isn't. He's not the most memorable villain. He won't go down especially with the Daniel Craig era, with the likes of Silva or Lashif. I think those two are from that's maybe why this just goes at number 3 for the Craig movies, because they have villains that really do stand out. Mads Mikkelsen is phenomenal in everything he's in anyway, but I just think he is just hypnotizing when he's on screen in Casino Royale. And Silva is another fantastic villain, and has the personal connection with another person that Bond loves. But with No Time to Die, they are trying to do so much. I think he does power, but when he is threatening Mathilde, I think that's where Rami Malek shines, and it shows why he was cast in this role, because he does that moment very, very well. And that is the moment where he may not have a lot to do as a villain, but that moment there is a good villain moment. And he does still get to have a good villain moment.
Yeah. I mean, his connection to Madeleine Swann and White, that connection, that throwback going back to Casino Royale, and White being that character that ties that whole, you killed my family, so now I'm going to kill your family. And so that was
White's really tied into all this, isn't he? I didn't expect him to be such a big character.
I didn't either, but I loved it, because that really it's another thing that ties these 5 movies together, and how much information White actually had, and who the people he was involved with, these kind of people. And so, but then once that was done, once this whole thing with her was done, it really was like, okay, he was trying to get revenge on her, not really going after Daniel Craig, So it was kind of a, kind of deal. But I mean, he wasn't bad. I like Rami Malek as an actor. I think no matter what you give him to do, he's going to do good. But just he was an afterthought as far as I'm concerned in this movie.
Which is funny, because it was very much into the world, and nanobots are going to take over. And at the end of the day, that was my least favorite part, the global stakes of just caring about everything. I wanted to know more. I wanted to follow Bond and his relationship with his compatriots, basically. And the overarching into the world was cool, but Safin really didn't play much into that as much as he could have, because I was... I guess it was lackluster in comparison, and I guess he's undercooked. He is undercooked, for lack of a better term, because I know he really got some poisoning. So let's not use that one. Actually, he is he's underserved. He's underserved in this because they gave that time to Bond and Madeleine, and he kind of just comes across as, no matter how great Rami Malek was, which again, you're right, he was incredibly intimidating in those scenes that he is given, and I love his weird, vaguely European accent. I can't tell you exactly what it is, but it's really intimidating. It reminds me of, as I said, classic James Bond, The Lair especially, too.
Island. How many times have we had islands as The Lair in James Bond movies?
I love it. I love The Island. Malcolm, what about you? What did Rami Malek? How do you feel Rami Malek did, and if the story served him at all?
I kind of agree with everyone that he didn't really serve the story that much. I actually did like him as a villain, though. I did think he was very intimidating and all that. But it's one of those ones that, especially from having connection to White, I would have loved if over the last few movies they did. If they planned on, I don't know if they ever planned on how far.
Probably not.
ahead.
He
But
get-
I mean,
and they're talking about tidying up the mess. They do. Obviously, Madeleine tells Bond the story of how someone came to the house and she fought them off in Spectre, and that was one. I remember the story as soon as I
I
saw.
forgot about that.
What I saw happening with Safin's introduction in No Time to Die, I went, see, that's how. Even if you hadn't planned it, which maybe they hadn't, that's how you execute it. You put a plan, and you've actually paid it off in a reasonable and believable way that this was actually a plan.
Well, no, agreed. And to wrap up the discussion about James Bond, my final thoughts on this is that I think this is an excellent movie. It's not a perfect film, but it takes what it lacks for in like sometimes cohesiveness in the plot and the kind of sidelining of side characters, and makes it up for in some great action set pieces, a really satisfying end to Daniel Craig's era, and just a great performance at the heart of it with Daniel Craig. And I look back and I'm just like, man, I want to go watch his entire filmography for James Bond right now. And it does that so well. And the more I think about it, the more I love it. It's one of those that's really sitting well. Joe, you had mentioned that you want like the more it may hit better as time goes on for you. It's already happened to me, and I saw it last Wednesday. So
Yeah.
I'm just looking forward to seeing what this does.
It's done for me. I have several parts of the soundtrack, the score already. I've been listening to Louis Armstrong's "We Have All the Time in the World" a lot more than I had before. And again,
Yes.
just the use of that song, it was always a good Bond, great song to use in On a Majesty's Secret Service, but they actually managed to add to the impact of that song, which I think is a very impressive thing to do. So very impressed with what it didn't. Like I said, it takes risks, and they're not going to pay off for everybody. And in terms of taking risks, it kind of compares a little bit to The Last Jedi in a way, which is a movie I enjoyed the first time I saw it, but since every time I go back and see it, it dampens for me. But looking at No Time to Die, I think they might have to go in the opposite direction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But Star Wars is still great, and The Last Jedi is not as horrible as people say it is, but it's not my favorite.
Yeah, I don't think it's horrible, but it's not great. But that's another discussion for another day. Dan, who obviously thinks that The Last Jedi is very horrible, tell me. Again, we'll talk about that at some other James Bond podcasts, because now you guys got to wrap up. Final thoughts on James Bond and No Time to Die.
No, I think it's an action-packed thrill ride. They take us all over the world. I love what they do with all the supporting characters. I love the family romance, that another side of James Bond we've never seen in another any of the Daniel Craig movies. And I thought it was the perfect conclusion to Daniel Craig and the 25th James Bond. And we're just going to start over new at 26, and we'll see what happens. And we got 5 great films and 15 memorable years for Daniel Craig. And if you're going to go back and watch any of some filmography, I recommend Layer Cake.
One I'm about to reference to answer your question earlier, Dan, about who should take over.
Oh.
Which you said Layer Cake was basically like Daniel Craig's audition for James Bond. And I think 2 other medias out there that are potential auditions are The Man from U.N.C.L.E. as Henry Cavill's potential audition. But the one that's my number one at the moment, if anyone watched the miniseries The Night Manager?
Good job, Joe. Good job.
Looks to me like Tom Hiddleston's audition for James Bond.
Bingo.
And he is phenomenal. And if you watch that, you'll see, and you see what I saw, you'll go,
Tom
yeah,
Hiddleston.
I can see it. I can really see it. And that's what's currently would be my top choice.
That was my choice, Joe. That's so weird that we both have the same number one choice. I have
nice.
Tom Hiddleston as my number one. And it's completely different than Daniel Craig. So you can't compare them, because they're completely different from one another.
Now, Malcolm, final thoughts, and who would you pick as James Bond? Or if you don't have anyone yet, save it for next time.
I mean, I was also going Tom Hiddleston.
I'll go against the grain next time, but I'm like, but go ahead.
But I mean, like, I think everyone's the one most people I seem to see want Idris Elba. I think he's come out and saying that he doesn't want to play
Yes.
James Bond.
Too old.
So
Too old.
Just on that,
well,
if they were
Too
to
old.
reboot it in a way that was like, nope, we're going to do one actor, one movie, move on. One actor, one movie. You could get then Elba, then Cavill, then
Not
Hiddleston,
bad.
and just work through it. I'd
It's not
be
bad.
on board.
but anyway, my final thoughts on No Time to Die. I think this was a fun movie. This was a perfect ending. And I'm going on a bold prediction here. I think this could be the first James Bond movie that get nominated in something other than technicals, and get some above the line love.
I think Craig has potential to have a nomination.
Yes.
I would love to see Daniel Craig get nominated for lead actor.
Not with those five. Not with five slots, guys.
I mean, it's going to be stacked, but I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he gets up there. I mean, like, I'm not going to throw any like possibility out at the stage.
Well, Ian McKellen got in for The Lord of the Rings, so you never know.
Now, and I think with the diverse group of people that we have currently now in the Academy, also, if BAFTA does it, look out, because BAFTA needs to do it first. If BAFTA doesn't do it, the Oscars is not doing it. Because they did it for Casino Royale. He got a nomination for Casino Royale, which is really cool, actually, looking back into it.
Yeah, that's Joe's people.
That's Joe's people. The BAFTAs are his people. So we'll end this by saying, when it comes to Oscar potential, look at it for possibly getting picture. I don't think, because we have to have a straight 10, maybe, but it's not Skyfall. If this was Skyfall, we'd have having that discussion right now if we weren't having that sliding scale, because Skyfall really did things that No Time to Die when it comes to just sheer critical acclaim. The fact that it was that close to getting Judi Dench in as supporting actress, that close to getting in supporting actor for Javier Bardem, it was close to getting picture. We'll have to see how everything else comes out. At this point, I'm only comfortable by saying, hey, look out for sound, maybe cinematography, maybe, depending on how things go. And then like song, maybe score. But then again, Hans Zimmer also has Dune. So we'll see how that plays out. Maybe like 4 or 5 tops.
I mean, yeah, I was supposed to say on that note, maybe it does slip into the best picture as a kind of a lifetime achievement award for because they couldn't get Skyfall in when that came out.
That's
because
a possibility.
of the slide scale.
There is a Cecil B. DeMille Award, is there, or no?
I think that's for the Golden Globes.
Is it?
I could be
Okay.
wrong.
They do give a Lifetime Achievement Award
They do
at the Oscars, and so I wonder. Oh, wow, that would be.
They could give it
the Broccoli's get an honorary Oscar.
That is a
Wow.
possibility as
Good
a
point.
25th film type of honorary thing.
Yeah.
Possibility.
Mm.
yeah,
Usually they give it to a person, but this way they would give it to a franchise. Ooh.
This would be an appropriate. Honestly, if you had to give it to a franchise, I'll like what? To me, James Bond or Star Wars would be like the ones to give it to.
I think they've done something like that for Star Wars.
I know they gave a special technical achievement award in the past to it, but I don't know if they gave it like a honorary Oscar for the franchise. Either way, while you're looking up that, Malcolm, I think at this point maybe it tops out at 5. It's gonna need to get a lot of steam from like critics group, like AFI is gonna have to put on its top 10 or something. Well, it's a British film. I'm not sure they only do American films. It's gonna have to get like a lot of love in critics groups, and I don't see that happening like Skyfall did. I'd love it. That'd be super cool if it made it into the top 10 personally. But Dan, Joe, Malcolm, what do you guys think if it has any potential in the big Oscar race?
2.
2.
Cinematography, song.
Yeah.
No sound. You don't
I think
think
there's
sound?
potential of score as well.
Maybe sound.
But I don't know what else. I haven't,
because they combined them now.
Scores are coming out yet.
They combined sound all into one thing, so maybe sound.
Well, because I know Skyfall, again, it tied with sound. So maybe they could be like, hey, because it's also really good sound. So you listen to that in IMAX, that is some really well done sound mixing and sound editing.
I think out of all of them, I think original score is the most likely for a win over everything else. Nominations, there's a few categories, but I think original song is probably the most likely win.
So we don't think that Billie Eilish has this in a cakewalk like Sam Smith and
No,
Adele did.
There's a Beyonce song out
There is.
there, and I can't remember. It was a Vivo. Is it Vivo that has the Beyonce song? Something.
No, it's King Richard.
King Richard. That's right. Yep, King Richard.
And who knows if there's going to be a new original song written for Spielberg's West Side Story?
Yeah, we know there's one for In the Heights, and Evan Hansen has got an original.
I mean, I'm pretty sure I do remember seeing something that have put an original song in West Side.
Okay, well, we'll see how that. Either way, song category is packed, so I'm looking forward to that. Either way, it'd be cool if No Time to Die made it in. Can't guarantee anything when it comes to picture. We're gonna have to see it do well outside of things, just the Oscars, you know. But that's gonna do it. I don't really have anyone to be that would replace Bond in my mind. I would love to see someone who may not be as large. I think Tom Hiddleston is just too big as Loki right now. I really would like someone who, while they may have done some movies, nothing that's, you know, culturally known personally.
And that might be the other thing we have to bear in mind is if they're not going to start search till 22, we're maybe looking at 2024, 2025 for a release.
Yeah.
Can I just say something, Joe, on that note?
Go ahead.
This is big budget blockbuster Hollywood we're talking about. These people. And I'm just going to go off of Kevin Feige as an incident. This guy's thinking 5 to 10 years in advance on everything. I'm telling you, I know it's. I think they already have their next Bond.
I think they're just not announcing it.
Yep.
That's a possibility. They might just be holding off. They might be in negotiations right now and talking about it. They might be have the person in mind and talking about it.
2 years ago. It was in the can 2 years ago. It was supposed to be out a year and a half ago. I'll be shocked if they don't already have the next Bond.
Then what I think. Go ahead, Malcolm.
I mean, I also believe them when they say they want they haven't found thought of anyone to replace Craig yet. Just because they do want, you don't want to overshadow the movie with announcement of who the next Bond is.
Correct. But anyway, that'll be it here today for Gone with the Wind. I know we literally have 4 minutes before they start their next match, Dan and Malcolm. So we're gonna wrap up right now. Oh, and Joe, are you joining in that as well? Is it all three?
I am.
Wow, well, good luck, you guys. I'm gonna go edit this right after this. So Dan, where can the people find you?
You can find me at Dan Skip Allen on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Pinterest. Also, I am a film critic in Orlando, Florida. I write for a website called disappointmentmedia.com. All my written reviews can be found there. I do all kinds of different kinds of reviews. I do retrospectives, anniversaries. If somebody dies, I try to do something about them, a movie review about them. I do all kinds of different TV shows. Also, I do a couple of YouTube shows right now. They're on hiatus, but hopefully they'll be back in the spring, and hopefully I'll have both of these guys on one of my YouTube shows next year. So in the season 4 of Bleacher Features. So
there we go. And Malcolm, where can they find you, Mr. Leiter?
You can find me over on Full Metal hosting Full Metal Classic and Random. This week's Random is a Tarantino match. If I'll be hosting Rankum on Saturdays, we go into 2000 horror next week. By the time this comes out, we've also would have done a What If series review, which we are doing today as we're recording. But by the time this is airing for everyone, it will be up. So.
Yes, correct. And finally, Joe, where can the good people find you?
You can pretty much find me mostly on Twitter at Joe Ed Farrelly or Letterboxd JFarrelly1. That's where I basically record. I don't do many reviews, mostly for new stuff. Or playing movie trivia over at Full Metal with Malcolm, also over at Multiplex, TMG, Nerd Entertainment Network, and playing and occasionally hosting at the opening night Trivia League.
Awesome. And thank you again, Joe, for joining us. I appreciate you. You were a fantastic guest. Like, I can see why you won the James Bond random match. You know your stuff, dude. And you can find me.
The second one as well.
Oh, you did. The champion wants to make sure that the questions are on point. And you can find me at Twitter at Cine_man. That's CINE_MANN. That's Cineman. Get it? Because the name's Manning. Haha. And of course, you can find me here hosting Gone with the Wind on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor, wherever you can find podcasts. Go give us a review. 5 stars would be great. You can do 4 as well, too. That'd be awesome. Just don't anything below that, please. And of course, you can find me here on YouTube at Take 3 Productions for hosting Gone with the Wind, as well as my YouTube channel, Manning Franks, as well as also reviewing movies for WFMY News, too, where I do that every other week because I'm also a photojournalist, so I can't do it every day as much as I would like to. Thank you guys again for joining us. This was our James Bond's No Time to Die 25th extravaganza to discuss and talk about and review that film. Thank you guys for joining us, and we'll get back to your regularly scheduled program next week where we talk all things Oscars, but we decided why not talk about this movie a little bit more. Thank you guys. Have a good rest of the day. See you at the movies. Bye-bye.